I'm Max Venus, and in this video we're going to look at exploring insert effects in FL Studio. I've currently got a drum loop, basically just a kick drum, and this percussion. So it's a percussion loop. I'm just going to first route it into the mixer. So I'm going to hit track here and send it into the next free mixer track. Okay. So you can see that we've got now the kick and the perc loop here. So I'm just going to turn the percussion down a bit, maybe raise the volume of the kick. So to add an insert effect to this, I'm going to basically select from the slots up here. So this opens up the list of all the effects you've got installed on your machine. You might have just the FL Studio ones. So I'm going to bring in a reverb here and just have a little play with that, see how it sounds. So it's important to note that I'm actually inserting this effect directly on the signal path for this loop. So as we introduce the wet value, just going to raise that. You can see that all the transient information is actually lost from that drum loop. So you might want to opt for a send, where you're sending portion of that drum loop over and you retain the transient information of that original drum loop, and then you can bring in the wet of the reverb separately. But for this, we're talking about inserts, so I'm just going to show you how I'd work with that for this particular sound. So I'm just going to look at the reverb here in FL Studio. Obviously, you've got the wet knob there. We can increase the decay. The damp basically adds much more wet, and it creates more high end in the reverb effects. Basically, you can see as I increase it and reduce it, it almost adds like a low pass filter on the reverb signal. It's good for if you've got a cymbal. Increasing the damp and the decay might give you a much brighter reverb, whereas if you've got something like a drum loop, you might want to focus on some of the low end potentially. But with something like this, the low end information would probably need to be cut away, so you can use the low cut functionality here on the left hand side. And you can see that low information is now only residing in the dry side. The wet value is now much more low cut. And as I introduce it, the low frequencies are brought back in. So muddying up the sound potentially. Might want to get rid of those. So you can use the low cut there to reduce that. And again, on the high cut, you can bring back in some of the high information or bring it out. So get to a point where you like it. You can reduce the size of the reverb. And this basically affects the room shape or the diffusion of the room. So something more angular gives you almost a delay kind of aesthetic. And then up into cathedral world. Somewhere in the middle works. Just going to reduce the wet on that because we've kind of accentuated it. So you can also add in multiple effects. So we've got a reverb now. Maybe you wanted to, I'm just going to show you a delay. So what you've got is you've got a wet reverbed effect going into a delay. So this effects chain basically works top to bottom. It goes through reverb, goes through delay, and then whatever you've got next. So maybe you wanted the reverb first. You can just highlight or just hover your mouse over the effect on the left-hand side and then scroll the mouse wheel. It actually rearranges and you can move them up and down in the signal path. So really useful for kind of auditioning maybe a distortion before a reverb, maybe after the reverb. Things like compression it's great for. Create more of a dubby sound. Then this is the distortion plugin or the WaveShaper. So all the way over to the left is basically where you're inputting the signal. You can create some interesting effects. almost a bit crush sound. Okay, so we might want to automate the wet of this delay and bring it down over time. So we can just right click on the dry and wet knob here, and then you get the option to automate the clip. So it creates an automation clip, sorry. So we can bring in that delay over time. And then it resets back to 0. So we might want to drop a quick EQ on the kick. And you can see how you can explore the effects and get different textures by adding insert effects to your tracks. So finally now, I'm just going to add a compressor so we can just demonstrate the importance of the order that you've got your inserts in. And maybe how moving the inserts around can change the sound and give you a different texture. So I'm just going to add quite an aggressive compression here. So we can see now that we're actually compressing the delay signal and the reverb signal and the wave shaping signal, and it's all being brought up all together. So maybe you might want to actually compress it before the reverb. So we can just move with the mouse wheel now and highlighting the compressor, we can just move it up through the effects chain and put it to the top. And now you can see that the compressed signal has got the reverb effect on it rather than moving it down. And now we're hearing the reverb come through. So it's really interesting to experiment with the order of your insert effects, create some different sounds, maybe, yeah, experiment with your sound design, create your own sound. So in this video, we've looked at insert effects, automating the insert effects, and how the order of the insert effects can actually change your sound.